Tonight on Alaska's News Source, a famed Alaskan musher has died. We look back at Lance Mackey's legacy.
High winds and heavy rain still impacting much of Alaska tonight. I'll let you know how long this storm will stick around.
Plus, a long-awaited announcement. The governor reveals how much your PFD check will add to your bank account this year. And our investigative team has learned whether Anchorage police are pursuing a suspected illegal gambling operation that we helped uncover months ago.
You're watching Alaska's News Source.
Good evening, everyone. Mushing icon Lance Mackey passed away late last night at the age of 52 after a long battle with cancer. We're joined now by our sports director, Jordan Rodenberger, as mushers from all levels of the sport have been sharing their memories and condolences today. Jordan?
Yeah, Mike, the mushing community has been expressing throughout the day just how much Lance Mackey meant to them and the sport. An outpouring support on social media. Brent Sass, the reigning Iditarod champion, sharing a photo of the two, stating Lance played a pivotal role in his career as his first mushing hero turned friend and mentor. The Barringtons, Christy and Anna, Iditarod veterans, sharing this photo of their mom and Lance with a note Lance wrote to her while she was undergoing cancer treatments herself. Longtime competitors on the trail, Aaron Burmeister, reflected on Lance's life, stating, quote, "You conquered adversity that most people would crumble with an attitude and humor that overflowed to everyone whose life you touched," end quote, as Mackey inspired a generation of mushers after him.
He was a big role model in my career of mushing, as you could say, and everyone's, but in particular, the fact of where I grew up was maybe even a little more touching. Eagle, every year you watch the quest come through. Lance was always one of them. So, I mean, becoming who I am today was very much a part of Lance and what I saw him do as a child, from the beginning there. And I think this sport needs a lot more Lances.
I've just been around his racing career for the last 15 or 20 years, so he's definitely going to be missed. It'll be different not even seeing him at the starting line of Iditarod or his presence at any of the races. So the memories will continue to live on for years and years to come of all the great battles that he had, with the SP Kennel crew and him and my dad duking it out on 40 Mile River and, who's going to rest where and for how long. And, those are the memories that we'll cherish forever, like most of the mushing community.
Two phrases used many times while speaking with people today: larger than life and fearless. And Lance Mackey was many things. He was certainly both of those, as we will continue to share the life and legacy of the mushing legend. Mike.
All right, thanks, Jordan. Well, as Lance Mackey made an impact in the Iditarod community, his legacy has affected the race. Iditarod CEO Rob Urbach is joining us now live in our studios to talk more about this legendary musher. And Rob, what do you believe Lance's legacy will be considered in the sport?
Well, I think Lance is the embodiment of tenaciousness of the Iditarod. He overcame so much adversity in his career. He had those 4 consecutive wins on the Yukon Quest, growing up with the sport, with Dick Mackey, his father, winning the race, and his brother Rick as well. But I think Lance had this really special inner spirit and this courage that was undeniable. And the man is very uncommon among uncommon mushers.
Rob, Jordan had kind of a sampling of reaction from the mushing community today. What sort of responses and comments and support have you heard from the mushers and the mushing community today?
Well, I think you see all the respect from his fellow competitors, but equally as important is his fan base. He was one of the most beloved mushers, and people love to see Lance in his full glory, arms out, waving to the crowd, the joy that he had in the sport, the joy that he had in taking care of his dogs, and the joy he had for the event and the lifestyle was very evident, I think inspirational and aspirational for many.
Well, given his success in the race and his bigger-than-life personality, do you think we'll ever see another Lance Mackey?
Sure. I think that there's no one quite as unique as Lance is, but I think there's a lot of up-and-coming mushers there that when they go out there and they're training and they're realizing how tough he was and how inspiring that he was, I think people will always aspire to the type of champion that Lance was.
Rob Urbach, CEO of the Iditarod, thanks so much for joining us this evening and sharing some of your insight about this mushing legend, Lance Mackey, who left us today. Thanks, Rob. Well, today, Alaska's governor announced the official amount of the 2022 Permanent Fund dividend.
So it's $3,284. So for a family of 5, that's over $16,000. That's going to help.
Now, in May, the state legislature passed what was called a compromise budget.
medical
that paired the
bills, car
PFD with an
repairs,
additional
rent,
energy
and
relief
it's
check.
going to help.
Both will be paid out starting on
Again,
September
this is not something
20th
that
to
just occurred
eligible
this year.
Alaskans who have
This
filed
is an
to
Alaska
receive the
institution.
payment
There are a lot of
electronically.
states in this country.
Nearly 2,000 people without power this morning as wind gusted up to 60 miles per hour. We continue to see wet and breezy conditions right now. Melissa Fry joining us in the Weather Center. Melissa, let us know when you think the storm, you let us know the storm was coming last night, and now that it's here, how long do you think it's going to stick around?
About 24 more hours, we will see strong winds here and rain continuing into tomorrow as well. But it was those upper hillside winds, really impressive here in Anchorage. You can see gusting to 60 miles per hour near Potter Heights, also up to 56 miles per hour in the Rabbit Creek neighborhood, 55 up on Hillside, even 43 at J-Bear, and 35 miles per hour in Anchorage. So strong winds, and this is a live view of current conditions right now up at Glen Alps. And you can see those trees, the bushes, it's all still blowing in the wind there tonight. We're still going to see breezy conditions through the remainder of the evening, even still seeing gusts as high as 35 miles per hour heading into tomorrow. And then there's the rain, still very wet conditions, especially across Prince William Sound. That's where it's coming down hard from Cordova into Valdez. Temperatures there in just the mid 40s, also just 40s in Talkeetna. Rain coming down throughout the valley into Anchorage and on the Kenai Peninsula. This storm system packing a punch with the wind and rain, but it's also tapping into a long line of moisture extending all the way out into the western Pacific. And that's what's going to keep the rain going through the day tomorrow. The reason we still have a flood watch in effect for much of south central and further north through the Alaska Range, still seeing that high wind warning for gusts to 70 miles per hour. So be prepared for pockets of heavy rain here tonight, breezy winds that'll continue through early tomorrow morning. Then for your Friday afternoon, a little bit calmer when it comes to the rain, but we will still see those breezy winds. Come Saturday, that's when we see some improvement. All that forecast coming up next.
All right, Melissa, we'll see you back in a few moments. Thanks. Well, it's certainly no secret that Mayor Dave Bronson and the Anchorage Assembly often do not see eye to eye. Some believe the constant round of vetoes and veto overrides is negatively impacting the flow of city business. Mayor Bronson spoke with us today. He says those conflicts are to be expected when the mayor is a conservative and the majority of assembly members are liberal.
There wasn't a conflict for the last 6 or 7 years because the assembly and the administration were of like mind. Well, at least half the population of the electorate voted for me. And so they expect something different. And I have to serve, I have to govern for every last person in this city. And so I have to find those places where we can balance.
Mayor Bronson had a lot more to say to us when we sat down today for a one-on-one interview. If you'd like to see it in its entirety, you can find it on alaskasnewssource.com or through our app, which you can find using the QR code right there on your screen. Still ahead this evening, are Anchorage police cracking down on illegal gambling operations? Mike Mason has a follow-up to his undercover investigation. Next.
You're watching Alaska's news source.
We have an update tonight to an Alaska News Source investigation. Last February, when our hidden cameras captured what appeared to be illegal gambling at an Anchorage arcade. Now we've learned that Anchorage police officers suspected this was going on at that arcade more than a year ago. Our investigative reporter, Mike Mason, is here with a follow-up report. Mike?
Yeah, Mike, after making a public records request, we received 2 reports of alleged illegal gambling that were filed with the police department, both more than a year ago, and both investigations were apparently closed without police taking any legal action. When we asked why, we didn't get any answers, and now that's raising even more questions.
This past February, Alaska's news source received tips from former patrons of the West Side Arcade at 3600 Minnesota Drive in Anchorage. They claimed it was a front for illegal gambling, so we went there, undercover with a hidden camera, to check it out for ourselves. We found a room filled with arcade-style video games that required cash to play, and after one player scored big, he headed to the back room where he claimed he got a payout. According to Alaska's gambling ban, that appears to be illegal. An amusement device is considered legal if it confers only an immediate right of replay, not exchangeable for something of value. Allowable items would include tickets or credits that can be redeemed, but not cash payouts.
I was concerned because I wouldn't want my kids just wandering into an arcade like that.
This woman's name is Sarah, but she wants to remain anonymous. Sarah notified the Anchorage Police Department about suspected gambling at Westside Arcade in June of last year.
So I filed a report and then never heard anything at all.
Nobody contacted you?
Nobody, nothing.
Since then, the case has been closed, and it appears no action was taken. Alaska's news source also found Anchorage police suspected illegal gambling at Westside Arcade and investigated it in March of 2021. And once again, no action was taken. In that case, an officer states, "The sergeant informed me that they believed the business to be an illegal gambling or gaming location, and they were going to apply for a search warrant." The report goes on to say, "It did appear as though there were lit up horizontal slots at each seat, but there was no money sign or anything indicating that is where you put money into it, other than the hole was roughly the size of a dollar bill. But when we went undercover, players knew exactly where to put their dollar bills. However, the APD's case was closed with no explanation as to what happened with that possible search warrant and no indication that officers followed up."
The only thing that I've seen since then is the news reports, the news stories.
What did you think?
I thought, finally, somebody is doing something about it. I was really glad. But I'm sure, they're going to open up somewhere else.
Yeah, the Westside Arcade closed shortly after we aired our reports last February, but former patrons have told us that other gambling spots have since popped up throughout Anchorage. As for the case where officers were seeking a search warrant, we were told we'd have to speak with the officer who wrote that report to get more information. We left him a message and haven't heard back yet. Mike?
All right, thanks, Mike. Coming up next this evening, somber scenes in the United Kingdom. People around the world paying tribute to Queen Elizabeth II, who passed away today.
And right after the break, I'll have a look at that full 7-day forecast, including how much longer, again, this wind and rain is going to stick around and what that weekend looks like. But first, take a look at those daylight hours for today. September 8th, we are at 13 hours and 33 minutes, sun setting tonight at 8:43.
This is a pandemic of the unvaccinated.
President Biden reiterates his position as he hands down an executive order requiring vaccines for a majority of federal workers. Response from the community.
You don't attack my people without paying a price.
That's the Anchorage mayor's response to the assembly not approving his choice to run the library system and what the mayor says he won't ask people to do when it comes to COVID-19.
A strong Pacific storm is set to deliver heavy rain and strong winds. I'll show you the new warnings in effect tonight.
A lack of school bus drivers means getting kids to and from school has been a struggle. We'll tell you when the Anchorage School District says they'll have more buses back online.
You're watching Alaska's news source.
We've been patient, but our patience is wearing thin, and your refusal has cost all of us. So please do the right thing.
President Biden makes his position clear with a huge announcement impacting millions of Americans. He is requiring COVID-19 vaccines for the vast majority of federal workers. Now, from an economist to reactions from the community, tonight we have team coverage of multiple aspects of this decision. First, we start with Maria Downey. And Maria, this decision impacts a majority of federal workers. Who else is required to get a COVID-19 vaccine?
So, Rebecca, President Biden also put out a second executive order extending the same standard to employees of contractors that do business with the federal government.
If you want to work with the federal government and do business with us, get vaccinated.
White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki says there are limited exceptions to the rule. This comes as Johns Hopkins says this week the U.S. hit 650,000 COVID-related deaths. And last week, more than 252,000 children nationwide tested positive for COVID. President Biden has laid out a 6-step plan to combat the pandemic, and he says the country is in a tough stretch as the Delta variant continues to surge infections around the country and here in Alaska. Psaki says federal workers will have about 75 days to be fully vaccinated.
That gives people more than enough time, in our view, to start and complete their vaccination series. If a federal worker fails to comply, they will go through the standard HR process, which includes counseling and face disciplinary action.
The administration is also calling on states to adopt vaccine requirements for employees who work in schools. And the White House also says the Labor Department is developing a rule that businesses with more than 100 employees require vaccination or weekly testing. This afternoon, Anchorage Mayor Dave Bronson called this part of the announcement, quote, flat out wrong and immoral and beyond the authority of the president, end quote. He says he will not mandate business to require vaccinations.
And Maria, Alaska is seeing another day of record hospitalizations and a high case count.
That's right, Rebecca. The state says 206 people are now in the hospital with COVID-19. That tops yesterday's 197. Today, DHSS is reporting 846 new cases of COVID today. That's similar to yesterday's count. The state says more than 250 of those cases are in the city of Anchorage, 89 in Wasilla, and 59 in Fairbanks. And 37 of the cases reported today are non-residents. 442 Alaskans and 14 non-residents have died so far. Today, the state says 56% of Alaskans 12 and older are fully vaccinated. Rebecca.
Thanks, Maria. Under the president's order, a large portion of Alaska's workforce would be required to get the vaccine. We turn now to Connor Matson, who looked into Alaska's federal jobs.
Yeah, Rebecca, there are thousands of federal employees, federal contractors, and private businesses all across Alaska that this new mandate would impact. Department of Labor economist Karina Wiebold says the state has a larger concentration of federal jobs compared to most other states. And it's partly due to the amount of federal land where people work, like the National Park Service and Fish and Game. Another big presence is the Department of Transportation because of the number of airports and the post office making up 1,500 of the 15,000 federal jobs in Alaska.
Alaska has a little bit of an outsized dependence on federal employment. We have more of it than a lot of other states have per our concentration of other jobs. And that primarily has to do with the influence of the military in Alaska.
Also, there are about 250 private businesses that are identified in the state with more than 100 average employees that would be impacted.
Thank you, Connor. Well, how do Alaskans feel about this? Marlise Irby talked to some people in Anchorage about their thoughts.
That's right. We know this is a hot topic, so we wanted to find out what people thought of this proposal by President Biden. While I was out, many people I talked with were against the vaccine being mandated to millions of people. Some felt it wasn't the right of the government to make a mandate, and some said it should be a person's choice. But some said that it wouldn't hurt to make this mandate to help save lives.
I'm a federal worker. I'm a contractor. Now he's backing me into a corner where I have to get vaccinated. I really don't like it.
I think it's a smart idea. I mean, if you look at all the science verifies that the vaccine is making progress in stopping these diseases.
But no matter which side people chose, they were very passionate about it.
I'm sure they were. An active day for the Anchorage Police Department. The intersection of 5th Avenue and Airport Heights reopened in the last 45 minutes after it was closed for hours following multiple crashes with injuries. Police say all injuries look to be non-life-threatening. APD detained the driver it says was at fault. But this was not the first major police presence in Anchorage today. Officers responded to a shooting in Mountain View immediately before the crash. APD says a woman was taken to the hospital after a non-life-threatening gunshot to her lower body. Police think it happened outside near the 100 block of North Hoyt Street. Officers are still investigating the motive. And an Anchor Point man is indicted for shooting an Alaska State trooper at the end of last month. It happened outside of the Warehouse grocery store in Anchor Point on the Sterling Highway. 6-year-old Brett Herrick is facing attempted murder, assault, and escape charges. Well, from record heat to new warnings for dangerous seas, active weather continues across the state tonight. Chief Meteorologist Melissa Fry is in the Weather Center with what we need to know about changes over the next 24 hours.
Yeah, Rebecca, it's really one extreme to another.
Tonight we have developing news. Alaska has lost one of its political legends.
Around 6 p.m. this evening, Congressman Don Young's office confirmed he had passed away. Alaska's lost its longest-serving lawmaker. Young was 88 years old. His office says he passed away while traveling home to Alaska.
Don Young was currently serving his 25th term in the U.S. House of Representatives and was the dean of the House. He was first sworn in back in 1973 and most recently re-elected in 2020.
He was born in California in 1933, but Fort Yukon is home for him. He served in the state legislature from 1966 to 1973.
And reaction is pouring in tonight as the news spreads all around Alaska and the country.
Patrick Enslow spoke to Senators Lisa Murkowski and Dan Sullivan tonight and joins us now with their reactions to Young's passing.
Mike, Maria, they both described the news of Don Young's death as sudden and shocking as they mourn the loss of a man they say epitomized Alaska.
We were really blessed by Don.
Congressman Don Young's efforts on Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. loomed large as he fought for Alaska, having been elected to 25 terms as a state's lone U.S. congressman.
He was 88 years old, but he was, by God, going strong. And Alaskans have seen the benefit of not only his political efforts, but his passion for Alaska.
A leader for Alaska and a leader for those who served alongside him, like Senator Murkowski and Senator Sullivan.
But to me, he was also a mentor. I learned so much from Don Young. You know, how to fight when he had to fight, how to work to get things done when you had to do that. And
he was not Washington, D.C. He was Alaska. And I think that's the legacy of a man. It's not legislation that is something that you say it was public law number whatever it was.
Alaska's 2 U.S. senators called Young a friend, and both say his effect on the state he represented will be felt for years to come.
I think we're going to see all kinds of people from all walks of life coming out telling stories of how Don Young impacted them in such a positive way.
All things Alaska, but there was no phoniness to him, no pretensions. Everything that he did was to benefit his state and the people that he loved.
A presence they say will be missed in the nation's capital and back home here in Alaska.
And rest in peace, Don Young.
Senator Murkowski was in Arizona for meetings when she heard the news and says she will be headed home to Alaska soon. Senator Sullivan remains on the East Coast, where he has been isolating following a COVID-19 diagnosis earlier this morning.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi commented on Don Young's passing. She said in part that it was a privilege to be sworn in by him as dean when she became Speaker of the House. And he never failed to honor the special traditions of our treasured institution. She says his historic service brought luster to the Congress, and his many friends in the House will strive to live up to his towering legacy. And House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy also commented this evening via Twitter. He said in part, Don Young was a giant with a heart as big as the Capitol and a spirit as strong as the Alaskan wild. His absence will leave Congress less colorful and less punctual, but his decades of service filled every room and touched every member.
And Governor Mike Dunleavy has reacted to the news. He said in part in a statement late this afternoon, Congressman Don Young has been a great friend and colleague of mine for many years. I'm deeply saddened to hear of the passing of this amazing man who in many ways formed Alaska into the great state it is today. So what happens next? It is Governor Dunleavy who is tasked with calling a special election to fill Young's seat in the U.S. Congress. According to Alaska statutes, a special election must take place between 60 to 90 days after the vacancy occurs.
Don Young was well into his campaign to seek his 26th term in office.
Dave LaValle talked with the candidates who sought to replace him in the fall. Dave?
Mike, Maria, the candidates told me tonight this is not about their campaigns. Republican Nick Begich co-chaired Don Young's last campaign 2 years ago. Anchorage Assembly member Chris Constant is the Democratic candidate. Both said tonight and the next few days are about honoring the life of an Alaska legend.
Don Young, his love for Alaska, for this nation, never wavered. He was a tireless worker for our state, and he's going to be sorely missed.
Just a punch to the stomach. You know, just 2 days ago I was in D.C. and had missed an opportunity to see Congressman Young, which really hurts because now he's gone. And, you know, there's an old saying, there's a time for every purpose under heaven, and now is a day to grieve.
State Senator Josh Revak spent about 6 years as an aide to Congressman Young and spent all of that time in Alaska. The loss, he says, has hit him a bit harder than most people.
Today is a sad day for Alaska. We lost a hero and a champion for the state of Alaska and for the nation. And to me, Don Young was more than just a former boss. He was like family to me.
Don Young had served as Alaska's representative since 1973 when he won a special election held in the wake of the disappearance of incumbent Nick Begich. Maria, Mike?
The Alaska Federation of Natives also responded to the news today.
President Julie Kitka said in part, "We did not always agree. However, he was always willing to listen. And if he could help, he would."
The word spread quickly today, and throughout the state, Alaskans reacted to the news.
Their longest-serving lawmaker, the Dean of the Congress, had passed away.
I think it's going to be hard to find somebody to fill his shoes. It's going to be hard to find somebody who has his charisma, his abilities in Washington. It's going to take time to find someone who has the clout Don Young had.
Since he has been in office for many, many years, I'm pretty sure that many Alaskans will miss him. And yeah, he will be replaceable, but he'll be hard to replace.
Yeah, it's sad news. He was our guy.
Whether you agreed or disagreed with his politics and opinions, there's no disputing that Don Young left his mark on Alaska.
And his legacy is as big as the great land he loved. For the 25th time, Don Young campaigned for Congress, cast his ballot, then got ready to go back to work. In our last interview with him on election night, we asked why he had done it for so long.
I like what I do for Alaskan people. I've said I've been their spokesman in Washington, D.C., and it gives you a great feeling of confidence and when you can help people out. And that's what I've been doing for all these years. And I still enjoy the campaign. I enjoy working with Alaskans, and we get things done.
And for Don Young, getting things done started way back in 1964 when he was elected mayor of Fort Yukon. 2 years later, election to the state legislature, where he served until 1973. That same year, he won a special election to become Alaska's only member of the U.S. House of Representatives. And just hours after being sworn in, he led the battle for approval of the Trans-Alaska Pipeline. He called it his single most important achievement. His colleagues honored him as Freshman Congressman of the Year. But Don Young's battles for Alaska were just beginning. More than a dozen times, Don Young led efforts in the House to open up ANWR to oil drilling, a fight he waged for decades.
I will get ANWR before I get out of this job. I've told some of those groups that don't like me, you want to get rid of me, pass ANWR.
Young was also one of the main sponsors of the 1976 Magnuson-Stevens Act, which extended U.S. fishing waters out to 200 miles and established 8 regional fishery management councils to prevent overfishing.
My MO is that you want something done, ask Don to do it.
In 2017, Young became the Dean of the House of Representatives, the longest-serving member, and he was also the oldest current-serving member of Congress.
When you think about the legislative accomplishments for Alaska, there's really nothing that Don didn't lead on in the House, whether it's ANWR or King Cove, Trans-Alaska Pipeline. He's been involved with all of it.
But Don Young's legislative record wasn't the only mark he made on the nation's capital.
Springbuck, Puku.
His D.C. office was wall-to-wall hunting trophies.
PETA doesn't like me. I don't understand that.
Young said the unique decorations helped him keep a last frontier state of mind.
It's got a reputation on the Hill to be the most unique office, and I've always said if you don't like dead eyes, don't come to my office.
Sometimes the crosshairs were on his colleagues.
You know, I rarely do this, but I'm deeply disappointed in my good lady from Washington. Doesn't know damn thing what she's talking about.
But his gruffness often led to a quick apology.
Withdraw my offending words. And to the lady, I do apologize. I get very defensive about my state.
Don Young saw a lot of changes in D.C. In the last few years, he lamented the harsh and often bitter political divide.
I've learned how to work across the aisle, and one of the frustrating things I see that break down now. And I try to keep it together as much as possible. I'm being accused of not voting for the Patriot Act.
Go ahead and clear that up.
I did vote for the Patriot Act. I have documentation of that. In fact,
Don,
I have it
you
right
are
here.
lying. H.R. 3162, roll call vote 398 on October 24th, 2001. You weren't.
H.R. 2975.
Challengers who tried and failed to defeat him came to learn why he had such political staying power with the voters.
I think part of it is because he is very spirited, and unlike a lot of politicians, what you see is what you get. And and he's a fighter.
Despite all of his victories, Don Young told us he never took re-election bids for granted.
The decision will be about, do they think I can still do the job as I've done in the past? Will I continue to do it for the future, for the good of the state?
He was running again for re-election to serve the state he loved, but fate had different plans.
You have your bright spots and you have some of your duller spots. And overall, I think I've had a lot more sunshine than I have clouds.
Don Young sponsored more than 1,100 pieces of legislation during his time on Capitol Hill. 648 became law.
That's amazing. Well, next, we'll hear from an Alaska historian about Don Young's impact on building Alaska.
Our breaking news tonight, a large fire burning in the Campbell Park area of Anchorage. The Anchorage Fire Department says it's on the north side of Dowling and the west side of Elmore. It's between Dowling and Tudor Center. A large tanker aircraft, 2 helicopters dropping fire retardant on that fire all afternoon long. And as of last check, no structures currently being threatened by that blaze. We're starting tonight with team coverage on this. We have teams all across that area looking at different aspects of this fire, and we have information that will be important for your safety. Lauren Maxwell, you're in a subdivision. What have you learned about the fire and the reaction of the residents there?
Well, I can tell you this is the Sunchase subdivision, and for a lot of the folks that live here, Mike, it is deja vu. If you can see behind me, it's a green belt over there, and there's a lot of activity with helicopters dropping water. We've seen the big red fire chemicals that are putting down, and a lot of people sitting out and watching. When I talked to them earlier today, when the fire was a little bit stronger, when the flames were leaping, people were really worried because it reminded them of the MLK fire that was basically in the same area about 2 years ago. Now, at that time, people were told to evacuate the subdivision. It was closed off for quite a bit. This time, apparently, officers came through and warned people, be ready. It might not happen. It might just be ready. I talked to a number of people that were sort of packing up, keeping things, just in case. But at this point, I have to say, it doesn't look like things are nearly as bad as they were even a couple of hours ago. So there is a little bit of a sigh of relief here in this subdivision that literally just backs up to the greenbelt where that fire is taking place. Back to you.
All right, that's good to hear. Thanks, Lauren Maxwell. Let's go live now to Patrick Enslow. He's also in a neighborhood that's off of Dowling. Patrick, what are you seeing and hearing out there?
Well, Mike, earlier today, folks who lived in this neighborhood said they could see flames. Well, that's not the case anymore. As you can see behind me, things have mellowed out from the fire just from visibly looking at it. This neighborhood backs up to the greenbelt, but we are seeing lots of planes, lots of helicopter. They're going in there, they're dropping off water, and you can't even smell smoke out here. And there's a gentle breeze. It's not too rough, but it's a gentle breeze, and yeah, they're going in there, they're dropping the water, and no real smell of smoke. And you can tell here, folks are starting to kind of get a little bit of confidence and kind of getting back to business as usual. But when they initially saw that blaze, you could definitely tell folks were very concerned, but there's a large presence out here as well between APD and some other folks. They're all out here. They're managing traffic. So if you do plan on driving around this area, there is a lot of roads that are closed as they're trying to fight this fire and make sure everyone kind of stays out of the area. Mike?
All right, Patrick on the scene for us tonight. Let's go to Austin Zhang now. He's on Tahiti Loop, close to the edge of Campbell Park. And Austin, tell us what you've been seeing, and you've been watching this very aggressive attack from the air all afternoon.
Yeah, it was honestly pretty impressive, Mike. They had a giant tanker come right over where my shoulder is here, and it basically like a flyover right over top of us. It was pretty crazy. They also have a helicopter still going. He's getting water from Campbell Creek, and he's still dropping water on that fire. I've probably only been here about an hour, and when we got here, smoke all over the place. Now, not so much, but I have a feeling that that last helicopter getting all of that water out of Campbell Creek is probably going to be sticking around and staying until all of the smoke from behind us is gone, and it's almost to that point. It was pretty cool to see. It was almost like we were standing in the middle of like an active airport. We had so much going on behind us. There was a command plane kind of flying in circles, letting everybody know. You can actually hear him right now. He's flying over me right now, letting everybody kind of know that's helping contain this fire what to do, because it's kind of a small area when you think about it, and you got 5 birds up in the air. A lot can go wrong, but it doesn't look like it did. It looked like it went pretty well. Obviously not fully contained right now. And we talked to some folks that were around here watching, and this is what they had to say.
Looking back here at the smoke, at times it looks like it's going down, but then again it looks like it's coming back up too, but a lot of that could be the wind. But I'm glad to see that they've got crews working on it constantly.
Yeah, and he was actually here when that fire in MLK Day in 2019, so you can imagine how scary that is. But this one a little bit further away, so hopefully this is the worst of it and it's coming to the end. We're going to send it back to you now, Mike.
All right, Austin, thanks for the update. Thanks so much. Chief Meteorologist Melissa Fry has been tracking the conditions near the fire and watching the winds especially close tonight. Melissa, you were saying this could have been an even worse situation with a simple shift of the winds this afternoon.
Yeah, there's 3 things we watch when it comes to wildfire danger. It's the temperature, it's the humidity, and it's the wind. Now, we know it's been hot. We know it's been dry. Fortunately, the winds, though, not too terribly strong, sitting between 6 and 10 miles per hour right over this fire. They were blowing in almost directly from the west. That's what blew that fire so quickly to the east, burning into that additional fuel that was available in this green space area. Now, had those winds been reversed 180 degrees, you can see the communities, the homes, and the roads that are just to the west of this fire. It would have been a very different situation. Now, temperatures have been warm, sitting in the 70s and 80s. So again, dry, warm conditions. We do have some thunderstorms, no lightning in Anchorage, but we have seen some lightning over the Kenai Mountains, also seeing some lightning tonight over the Cop River Basin, and we still have that chance for an isolated thunderstorm here in Anchorage here this evening as well. Otherwise, the chance for any widespread rain just not going to happen in the near future. Temperatures tomorrow will be right back up into the 70s. This will be the 15th day that we've seen 70-degree days here in Anchorage this summer. Already the warmest start to a summer that we have ever recorded. Mike, I'll have a look at that full 7-day forecast here in a few minutes.
All right, well, so we'll see you then. Thanks. Well, our mission here at Alaska's News Source is to always get you the information you need to make decisions about keeping you and your family safe. Again, this afternoon, we do not know of any structures that are being threatened by this fire. Roads in that area are closed around the fire scene, and there's a new emergency operations number. You can call 343-4701 to get information on the fire, especially if you live in that area. Again, that's 343-4701, and officials are asking people to stay out of that area. Here's a look now again at where the fire is specifically. Again, the fire department says it's on the north side of Dowling, on the west side of Elmore, and it's between Dowling and Tudor Center. It is in the same area as the MLK fire back in 2019. We're going to keep tabs on this fire all throughout this hour and this evening on alaskasnewssource.com.
Now, welcome back. If you're just joining us, again, we're monitoring a wildfire that's burning in the Campbell Creek area of Dowling and Elmore. This is video from this afternoon. And we just got an update from the Anchorage Office of Emergency Management. They say the fire is currently 10 acres and 25% contained. 17 Anchorage fire units responded to the fire, along with the Division of Forestry and J-Bear fire crews. In addition to those ground crews, they also had 2 helicopters and 3 air tankers working the fire. You can see attacking it from both below and from above. Now, I want to go back out to Lauren Maxwell, who is in a residential area near the fire. Lauren, just 3 years ago, back in July 2019, we were in a very similar situation, really scary for those homeowners in that area. What are you hearing that the public needs to hear at this point?
Well, you know, the homeowners here, as you said, are very cognizant of the fact that they literally had a fire very much like the one behind me in their backyard just a couple of years ago. The folks I've talked to have said they were more concerned about that particular fire because at that time they were asked to evacuate their entire subdivision. This time, officers have come through, told people to get ready, and we have seen some folks doing that, you know, just kind of packing things up, putting it in the car. Earlier today, we saw some people with their hoses out, just trying to keep the sides of their condos well hydrated. You know, there's a lot of concern, but I have to say that in the last hour or so, it doesn't seem like we're seeing those big flames that we did at one point. So talking to people here, I would say they are feeling a little bit more relaxed about how things are going, but again, many of them are prepared in case they do have to evacuate.
All right, again, Lauren Maxwell reporting for us there in Midtown. And yeah, I can't imagine those homeowners that went through this again just 3 years ago. 2019, that was the hottest year we had ever recorded. And at this point, we are already seeing hotter conditions than we did that year, again, back in the summer of 2019. Again, the fire now 25% contained, estimated to be about 10 acres. I want to show you a time lapse of what it looked like, the progression of the fire, because it did grow just so rapidly. And this was 2 o'clock, no sign of the fire, but you'll see about 2:15, you'll start to see the smoke firing up there. There it goes. And it did continue to spread and grow in height very quickly, seeing flames on the ground by about 3:15. The flames even higher than the treetops. Then we saw that smoke spreading further to the east with those westerly winds. And here by about 4 o'clock, you start to see the smoke dampening down just a bit. And then it stayed pretty stable at this point. You can see they must have a pretty good handle on the fire because we're not seeing nearly as much smoke. But every once in a while, you'll see another tree burst into flames even at this hour. As I mentioned earlier, the winds, really the saving grace in this situation, they were out of the west. And the homes that we're talking about right here, the fire burning just to the east of that, had those winds been the opposite direction, again, an entirely different situation.
There are houses within that fire perimeter that are, that the fire went around.
Flames burning in an evacuated subdivision. Upsetting news tonight as some of the Kobe Ag subdivision is now encompassed by the fire perimeter. Good evening, everyone. We're starting our coverage of the Clear Fire south of Fairbanks with Chief Meteorologist Melissa Fry.
We have confirmed there is damage in those subdivisions off the Parks Highway that take Kobe Road, just south of the community of Anderson. We're still waiting on all the details of what that damage entails, as fire crews themselves are still waiting to confirm.
Fire has moved through the area and damage has occurred. We really don't know to what degree that is because, well, we're still busy fighting fire in the area, trying to make it safe for the firefighters and then eventually for the borough to be able to assess what's going on.
Structures and private property now inside the fire perimeter.
The fire perimeter map shows where fire has been. It doesn't necessarily mean it's active right there at this time. And and that's not to say there aren't islands within that perimeter. For example, homes that are still standing, that did weather the fire. There are houses within that fire perimeter that are, that the fire went around.
More than 65,000 acres have burned.
It's been a real challenge, a lot of concern, a lot of people and homes in immediate danger in the line of fire.
And the Denali Borough Mayor says about 500 firefighters are working to control the fire.
This is the biggest fire, certainly in my 10 years as the mayor. I think it's probably the biggest fire and fire response in our borough's history.
Some people in the line of fire choosing to evacuate.
We're going to win the battle here, but we're going to win the fight, but we have lost a couple battles along the way, and there was a tough one a couple days ago when the fire did make a push to the river.
Others choosing to stay behind and fight.
We're working hard on it. We're working together on it, and we're going to prevail.
The fire is now 12% contained. Now, this is, of course, an evolving situation hour by hour, and we're monitoring conditions very closely. A lightning strike started the fire in late June. We now go to meteorologist Joe Bartosik with a closer look at the current weather situation around the fire. Joe?